We together are the salt of the earth. We season our world, making it taste good to God. And individually we are to have salt in ourselves, the salt of peace within and among ourselves. Salt is something we are, not something we do. And salt that has lost its flavor is sand in the salt shaker. It was never salt in the first place. My quest to discover the meaning and intended application of Jesus' command to go and be reconciled to any believer I know to hold an offense against me now leads me to an earlier piece of the same discourse. Jesus' statement that we, all believers, together are the salt and light of the world. I will start with verse 13, which calls me, as one of you, plural, the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its flavor, with what will it be salted? It is then good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under the feet of men. This is a statement of fact, not a command. I am aware that it is traditional to read it as a command. I must go and be salt, as if being salt is something I must do, but it is not a command. It is a statement. You, plural you, all believers in Jesus together, are the salt of the earth. Though in this context, Greek would have permitted Jesus to altogether omit the indicative present tense copula, are. He used it, este, and so emphasized that he was equating us to the salt of the world, not commanding us to be or become salt. Like it or not, we now are the salt of the earth, the only salt the present human world will ever know. But what is salt? What is its function? And what is Jesus talking about when he speaks of salt that has lost its flavor? First, it must be said that salt is a single, well-characterized chemical substance. We now know it as sodium chloride, but even in Jesus' day it was known to be a single substance, distinct from all others, and its most important properties were known. People knew what salt looked and tasted like, knew it was soluble in water, unlike the sand with which it was sometimes found to be mixed, knew how to refine it and purify it, and knew how to use it. Sodium chloride does not have to do anything to be or become salt. It simply is salt. When discussing Jesus' saying about salt, interpreters often point out that salt had 4 uses in the world of Jesus' day. It was used as a seasoning, number 1. Number 2, it was used as a preservative. Number 3, it was used painfully as a styptic, a medical treatment that stopped bleeding from wounds, and an antiseptic. And number 4, it was used as currency, the salarum, salary, paid to Roman soldiers. Modern presentations then tend to focus on its use as a preservative and say that when we do what salt does, we preserve the world from evil. So our focus tends to be placed on the things we do as a church and as politically involved individuals to fight against moral corruption in other people and society as a whole. But this seems to me to emphasize the wrong aspect of saltiness and to convert Jesus' statement of fact into a command to do something. Granted, we do preserve the world simply by being here, by being the focus of God's love here. And to the extent we are letting the Spirit live through us, our lives, our being, not our doing, are calling others away from evil and toward God and restraining the growth of evil. But even in this function, our role is that of a preservative, not an abrasive. It is not our calling to scour evil out of other people or society. Only God does that. Our calling is to simply be together who we are. I believe Jesus' real emphasis here is on the first use of salt, its use as a seasoning. We, as the salt of the world, are what makes God still perceive humanity to taste good. We are also what makes Christ taste good to those in our world who will believe in him or will come to believe in him in the future. This can be seen in a parallel saying of Jesus in Mark. Mark 9:50, salt is good, but if the salt has lost its saltiness, with what will you season it? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with one another. Here the emphasis is clearly on salt as a seasoning. Salt is good because it makes food taste good. But what can be done with salt that has lost its saltiness? Simply adding good salt to it won't work, because that will only adulterate and dilute the good salt I add to it. And adding some other seasoning won't work either. I would only be diluting the other seasoning to make something that isn't salt and isn't even salty. So if I find something that is labeled salt but has lost its flavor, the only thing I can do is throw it away. But what is salt that has lost its saltiness? Salt, sodium chloride, the real item, never loses its saltiness. The key is found in the fact that the label on the container may not perfectly match its contents. Sand could become mixed in with salt, and if the sand particles are the right color, they will be very hard to distinguish from the salt just by looking. Jesus made the same point in some of his kingdom parables in Matthew 13 that show wheat and weeds growing together in the same field, inseparable from each other, and a fishing net full of both good and bad fish. But when the salt is dissolved out of the container by moisture and use, it may appear that there is still some salt in the container, when really there is only sand that at first looks like salt. The test is to taste it. If it tastes salty, there is still salt there. But if it leaves only tasteless grit in my mouth, it is sand, not salt. This is salt that has lost its saltiness, or more accurately perhaps, sand that has lost its association with the salt in the container. The sodium chloride in the container did not mysteriously change to silicon dioxide, sand. It was always sand, never salt in the first place. It is just no longer mixed with salt. Jesus then tells us what our saltiness is. If we have real salt in ourselves, we will be at peace with each other. Both of the verbs in this sentence are present imperatives, telling us as believers together to do something now. The first verb commands us to have salt in or within or among ourselves. It doesn't command me or us collectively to be salt or act like salt. It only tells me and us collectively to have salt within ourselves and between ourselves and our believing community. To let ourselves be seasoned with salt, to taste good to each other and to God. The second command tells us collectively, and me as one of us, to be at peace with each other. This peace is our saltiness, the salt we are to have in ourselves. It is what makes us taste good.